Greetings, Warlords. Rodge here. Welcome to Saga Thursday, the show all about the skirmish miniatures game from Studio Tomahawk, and joined once again by Monty. Monty, how's it going, buddy?
Excellent, Rodge. How about yourself?
Good. Today we are just gonna be going back to the olden times. So we used to discuss our hobby and a game like in every episode on top of the, the usual business.
Right.
For quite a while, we did that, and it ended up being quite a lot. And once we stopped doing that, we found the episodes pretty much just as long. We're still talking about Saga, so we haven't visited that for a while. So we're going to take the opportunity and catch up on some hobby we did this month and some games, and that'll be kind of a launching point, I'm sure, for 1,000 different mini topics as we go through here. So I'm looking forward to this one. Buddy, did you do any special painting because you knew we were going to talk about painting, or not really?
I mean, technically, I've been kind of taking a rest. I have a pretty deep bench. But I also knew that Saga Storm was coming up, and I looked over at my Saga collection, and I had Footsore Irish and Footsore Scots, like just been sitting in a box, sitting for a couple of years. So I kind of pulled those to the top with the idea that I could do a fluffy Irish with Dane axes and maybe war dogs. You know what I mean? Just take the edge off and go have fun with it. So I started that, but I also went on vacation. So you would think I could finish a warband in a month, but it was summertime and vacation time.
Yeah.
So I got a leg up on it, but it's not done.
Yeah, August was definitely a busy month for folks. We're doing our ongoing Warband Challenge for the Saga Thursday patrons, and we're strong in June and July, but I think we lost a few folks in August, unfortunately, but there's always time to jump right back in and get it going again. So I had some stuff on the paint desk that had been there for quite a while. So this episode finally made me finish them because I knew I wanted to get the finished pics to share in the video. So I'm really glad that we chose this topic. Otherwise, they would still be sitting here eyeing me up on the desk. But we'll get to those shortly. There is a couple event type things I want to get to. Saga Storm is this weekend. It's, as this comes out, basically 2 days. This comes out Thursday. The event's on Saturday. Monty, you're going. I'm going. I'm bringing new Saga buddy Phil. He's coming with me.
Nice.
Get some games in. I'm going to be bringing some Welsh using my my Irish figs I painted up back for Adepticon. I'm going to use those. And so they're foot sloggers, and we'll see how a bunch of levy shooters do for the Welsh. Probably all right. I would imagine. Monty, you're probably pumped for that, right?
Oh yeah, it'll be fun.
Yeah, so well, looking forward to that. That is in, North Minneapolis, Minnesota.
Yep.
Still time to get in on that if you so choose. This is going to be a busy fall in the Midwest for events, Monty. After that, we have Feast of Ravens. That's October 5th, 2024, also in Minneapolis, Minnesota, basically. And you're helping to run that, but you're playing too, right?
Right.
Monty?
Well, so we wanted to share the burden. That's just the nature of an event. So we have a game day manager, Matt, and he ran it last year. He was the game day manager. Yes. He volunteered to step up again. But to keep the load light on him, I have done like the packet, the organization, the post, the scenarios. So kind of like we'll roll up. We've got two very frequent Saga players and myself, and Scott DeRung, who will be like tech support. If questions come up, we'll be there. Of course, with two of us, it means that I wouldn't be answering a question on my game, and he doesn't have to answer a question on his game. Last year, Matt said it went so smoothly. He was like, that's half the reason I'm going to volunteer. Like, I just show up. I announce the rounds. Boom, boom, boom. You guys are great. So I'm like, yeah, let's do it.
That's cool. Yeah. As long as you're under 12 or 16 guys, I mean, I would even encourage him to be the ringer if he wasn't planning on it or what.
Yep.
It's easy enough, especially if you got some dedicated helpers. So glad to hear that one is going well. Monty, unfortunately, I think I told you I will not be able to make it for Feast for Ravens because Monty, my Fall Saga Odyssey is happening once again. I'm going to advance the colors over there in Ohio this year, and that is
That's
1 week
awesome.
afterwards. And I'm leaving the Thursday, I believe, or maybe the Wednesday. Can't remember exactly what the plan is going to be, but thanks to Mark Bishop and Joe D and my buddy Davey, I'll be crashing probably at their places all the way down there. And so I'll be going by myself, but if you're crashing with buds, it makes it a doable trip for sure. So I'll be going to Milwaukee first, hanging out with Davey, getting a day of games in, driving to Fort Wayne, staying with Mark. Then Mark and I will head to Advance the Colors on Friday. That night, I'll probably stay with Joe D. Maybe I head back with Mark, keeping it loose there. And then coming back for the Saturday event, then back to Mark's, then back to Davies. It's like a 5 or 6 days of driving and gaming. And I did a similar thing last year, going down to St. Louis. I had my buddy Ryan, and I can't even remember the name of the event that was going on over there, some kind of convention. But then I went to KC for the Ironman and stayed with Charles Yaw for that one. Thanks again, Charles, for letting me crash. And then on the way back, stayed with a buddy in La Crosse, Wisconsin. Got some more games in. So if this fall Saga tour becomes a regular thing, that's not too bad. I'll take that. So looking forward to it. So this one is, I believe it's Vikings, maybe Vikings and Invasions. Definitely Vikings. And then I think Ancients for the other day. So mercenaries are allowed. So I'm going to have to see what I got in the collection here, see what mercenaries I might use for these events, and give it my best. But I just heard, Monty, there's actually another event in October there nearby. This one's in Fort Wayne, Rumble on the Rivers 2024.
Okay.
And that's October 26th, 27th. And that looks cool. Just heard about it. I know Mark is helping to run that. So he just posted the packet on the Saga Thursday Discord server. And the packets for the other events we mentioned are there as well. So I'm not blew out my trip 2 weeks before. Otherwise, this would definitely be in contention, I think. But I think my issue, probably our issue maybe, is that I think it's November 9th and 10th down in KC. They're having the Grand Championship event. So I'm going to that one, heading down with Adam and Monty. Can you confirm or deny?
I can neither confirm nor deny.
Okay.
I mean, I am working on it. I actually have started playing a little bit of Tabletop Simulator, running a few ideas out, because that will be some very stiff competition at that event.
Yeah, so kind of the gloves are off. Let's play.
Yep.
So yeah, that'd be cool if you can make it.
Yeah.
We'd probably do some carpooling, but if not, I'll do my best, buddy. Bring it home.
Oh, I think you will. You will, I'm sure.
All right, so let's move on to some hobby stuff.
Okay.
I've been able to use the hobby logo shield here for some time. Let's start with you, Monty. So you were kind of mentioned it already. These are footsore Irish and Scots. Is that?
Yep.
So I've got the whip up here. See some battle cattle. Is
right.
that?
They probably stole them from the Highland Scots. I think they might be Highland cows, but I had them just kind of sitting there, not really doing much of anything. So I thought, that'll work for objective markers. And I gotta say, I painted these probably 4 or 5 years ago, and maybe one of the issues, like I had them and then they just kind of sat, was I'm kind of reaching that point in my painting that like painting the same thing over is a little less interesting. And that's used to be how I painted. I paint the same thing 3, 4, 5 times, right?
You had these, they weren't these models, but the same.
Actually, they might be pretty close to the same models. Maybe not the slings. I think I leaned into this line to paint up a mix of picks. They were like my first pick force, so I was using the Atticati figures, the Naked Madmen, not in here, but the rest of these guys go really well with picks if you use the right shields. And so I painted them. I had a lot of fun with it, but then I looked, I'm like, yeah, I know all these faces. I've painted these before. So I was not like, champing at the bit to get back into it. But when I started to, God, I just have to say, shout out to Bill Thornhill. His work here is superb, as it always is. I mean, but this may be his best work. And I'm sure he's done a lot of stuff, but I do kind of miss him in the historical space. He used to do a lot. And digging into these figures and painting them, and just like how nicely sculpted. Bill himself is a fabulous painter. And so to me, one of the joys is when you have a sculptor who's also a painter. They tend not to do the things that can make figures very frustrating. And I want to be real careful. I can think of some examples. Okay, I'll just say it. Sometimes when I do fantasy and some of the fantasy, they're packing so much detail right on top of it, detail on detail on detail, layers, and they're all right on top of each other. And you're trying to get your brush in. You're like, my God, man, whoever the sculptor is, you are amazing, but I can't get my brush in. And I actually heard, this made me remember, I heard in one of my Blood Bowl comments, someone was painting dwarfs, and he was like, oh, these were just a trial to paint. And so I asked him, and he goes, it's because the beards are over the buckles, and the buckles are under the beards, and like, it's just struggle to get a brush on it. So anyways, long story short, yeah, credit to Bill.
That's cool. Yeah, I hear you on the detail. Think of those dwarves. Each dwarf beard lock has its own 2 or 3 different, pieces of jewelry in it, and wristbands covered with runes and little rings and stuff. So yeah, I've got some Blood Bowl stuff on my desk right now, GW, and I'm just looking at them, just come on, man, don't need all this extra detail. Yeah, so when I assembled stuff back in the days, I'd never glue the scabbards on little pouches and stuff, just set them aside. And if I could, I would like remove detail with like a like a hobby knife or file it off or something. It's like, I don't want to paint that little emblem, so I'm just going to scrape it off right here and save myself 25 minutes later. But yeah, these guys look great. Definitely got that Monty paint vibe going to them. I don't know if it's the yellow, the colors, combination thereof. What'd you do for the basing?
So basing is pretty simple. As you can see, it's white. I still, depending on what I'm doing, if I'm doing World War II, my base color will be different. But in Saga, I had these guys primed up in white. To be honest, when I started doing them, I was going to lean a little more into contrast. And so like I did a batch. It was a rather large batch, might have been 10 or 12. And I was like, you know what? I looked at my watch. I'm like, I need to start whipping on these and, TikTok. So I did the skin with something that on a test model, I'm like, I can live with that skin. And I did a skin. It might have been Army Painter, one of their speed paints. And when I was done, I looked, I'm like, okay, that's fine. But you know what? They really need just a little pop. And then I put the pop on. I'm like, you know what they really need? They really need a pop on top of the pop. But before I was done, they weren't speed painted at all. So I was like, okay, that idea goes out the window. But that's fine. Improv.
That's fine.
Yeah. I dug back in and painted them in a more traditional style. There was a little bit of speed painted for like easy parts, like those dark belts. I get that dark brown and give me a nice shadow and dark base to work up from. But less speed painting than I was going to do. I can also, like on this one, it's a little fast. I kind of give myself the excuse that, there are people who are like, especially the levy, they're rather poor and living in smoke and dirt. And I can always go kind of pop them up a little bit, but I got to get them ready. So I did kind of blitz a little bit to get them where they're at.
Cool. Yeah, I hear you on the speed paint. The more I use it, the more it's just kind of just another layer of paint. It's not the be all end all typically for me. Put the speed paint layer down and continue to highlight or shade or do whatever you're going to do to it. So it's just a paint that kind of just has different properties.
Yeah.
So sometimes you'll reach for it, when it's appropriate. Sometimes not. So is this like a whole warband then? Are these guys are done?
Yes. I mean, it's growing. It has a long, well, I shouldn't say a long range. It's a good way to go.
Have the
because
expansions down the road.
Right. I want them to be able to be played as Scots. So I need to bring in, I've got a bunch of Scots, like two-handed spear figures. Cool. They don't do any good with the Irish, so they're cute and waiting. But I got the shooters. I got the, the spear warriors. I've got the Hearthguard. Yeah, actually, sorry, the heroes with heavy weapon, because that's what I want to do. Just a little fluffier. I love heavy weapon. I know it's a terrible idea, but the idea that your champions and your warlord are running around with a heavy weapon. I mean, I should be able to hit stuff when I get that +1, but they're going to go down because I won't be closing ranks ever once, when I'm playing the Irish.
Yeah. I mean, they weren't going to close ranks, whether you have the javelins or the heavy weapons. But yeah, it's good to have them, especially we're skilled players, just for playing against new guys. So when I was playing the Irish, getting ready for Adepticon, half the games I would just use them as the heavy weapon guys. And it's tougher it is definitely a step down. It's a detriment, a self-handicap, despite every attempt to try to get that, squeeze out something you couldn't do anyways. But I mean, yeah, you just rather have the javelins most of the time because you're still getting a +1 to hit unless they close ranks. So, but you kind of want them to close ranks because then you're like, well, there's no close ranks, so my guy can live, please.
Exactly, please.
So definitely a step down taking the heavy weapons. But yeah, these guys look great, man. Nicely done.
Yeah, thank you.
When did you start them?
Ooh, it was in August.
Oh, okay. Dude.
Yeah, I got a good jump start before we went on vacation. Then I came back, and then I didn't have a lot of motivation. And in the last couple days, I've been like, I need to get going here. I was like, but luckily, like little cheats, like remind me, is this Luke's basing is really fast, like the sand and rocks.
Yeah, I was going to ask that I forgot.
Right.
Yeah, looks like one of their mixes there. So is that that's the case?
Super fast. And then this is just me personally, since it's the Irish, I kind of added a little more static grass into the base, so it was a little less Mediterranean sand look and a little more little grass.
Yeah,
so
it does. Just me. It does look like my boys have the Mediterranean sand basing, so that kind of color profile looked familiar there. But they got quite a few that are pretty similar to each other. So
yeah, but it really helps. And then the shield transfers, of course, boom, boom, boom. I kind of kept all the shields together, did that in the stage. Anything to kind of maximize productivity and efficiencies.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Yeah, amazing work, man. Well, I was getting some stuff done.
Yep.
Not as much as you, despite being at home the entire month. First up, couple robots here for Infinity, and still got a kind of a commission in the background. So these guys were going. The only reason I kind of including these was I did paint them in August, and I like them. But have you ever painted models, Monty, and then done the bases separate and then glued a finished model to a finished base? Have you ever done that for Saga?
God,
or anything?
Yeah, not even once, I think, in my life. I just haven't. But so that's what you did here?
Yeah, well, these are going to go on kind of scenic, kind of like techno bases or, a city stuff. So there's little sewer grates and stuff like that. So those were all painted and like airbrush separately. So like in Infinity, it's really more common to use those kind of base toppers rather than do like sand or something like that. So I actually I don't really like really like it with these metal models. So they kind of got to be pinned and stuff, and it's kind of a pain. But I have thought about, you could using the Luke's app stuff. It doesn't matter. You're not going to gain anything by doing the bases separate. But I think if you were kind of like my Heathens or something, putting down the sand, you're painting them, you're dry brushing it, you're flocking. You could see it, just kind of doing 50 of those bases, and you're using plastic models, and you can easily glue them on. You're not worried about durability or anything. You don't have to drill a hole for each guy if you're using the Gripping Beast, Dark Age Warriors or something. Right. You can just glue them on top of the sand or something. Could be a viable way to do it, but yeah. I'd be curious if any of you folks watching have done that, painted separately, base separately, and then combined it. And when you do that, and if you were happy with your decision after it was all said and done. All right. So up next, I've got some Age of Magic models, Monty. So these are for my Warband Challenge. So these are some Bestiarum miniatures. These are 3D prints printed by me with my 3D printer.
Wow.
And these are for the Warband Challenge, like I said, but these will be in the Age of Magic book coming up probably sometime next year. So you can kind of follow along if you're a patron. So they've been seeing these. And so I painted 2 other points worth. So this is a 1.5 points. I did start the Boss Man, but he was such a big beast. I couldn't finish him in time this month. But so just to talk about the speed paint. So the white armor is a mix of, so they're sprayed white basically to start with. And so the white armor is speed paint. The gray, there's kind of a dark gray. So these are like I'm using the Army Painter stuff. I don't know what the names of them are, but there's like a darker gray and like a lighter bluish gray. So I mix those together to kind of get something in between. And then I'll put that over all the white armor. And then I'll edge highlight after it's all dried, like just white, super white, pro acryl white, so nice bold white. And then, so all the edges are like a stark white. And then for some of like the armor plates, it's not the edge. I'll mix some of the pro acryl white with like the lighter of those grays. Kind of, I think it's called runic. It's like a lighter bluish gray. So you actually have to do that, I think. So these are like the original recipe where they get like reactivated, I think, unless you do that. So I don't seem to have a problem if I mix a little bit of that runic in. And so I've kind of got a super white for the edges. I'll highlight kind of manually with that white gray mix. And then after that's done, I'll go back into the shadows. I got kind of a real dark gray color that the speed paint does a good job getting in the cracks, but it's not 100%. So there's just kind of some touch-up work. And then the last thing I do is a little dark gray and some red contrast paint, speed paint. And I thin it down a super bunch and just get barely a little amount on my brush and kind of just do some shading in the darker parts. So there's this kind of like a reddish, just like a warmness to the shadows to contrast first the cold white, so the highlights are whitish, bluish, and the shadows are dark and reddish. And so usually my shadows end up being purpley on everything. So, but I've broken it, Monty, for this one. I'm doing reddish kind of undertones for a lot of the stuff here. So that is how I did the armor. So that's just an example of using the speed paints to start with, but it's just, it's a step. It's not the be all end all. and you keep going. So, any random thoughts, dude?
Yeah, I have a couple random thoughts. One is it's freaking gorgeous. The other one is I meant to ask this, and then it slips my mind. So, color theory. Did you do arts in college, or did you pick up color theory like this over time?
Probably over time.
Okay.
And, yeah. No formal training or anything like that. I know there's contrast, complementary colors, orange and blue and stuff. Back in the Warhammer days, things were a lot simpler, and people know you choose the complementary color. Would have an army that pops. If your Empire guys were wearing blue and red, or blue and orange armor, or purple and yellow colored clothes. So I'm aware of that. I don't subscribe to it. I guess I'm more kind of interested in the cold versus warm aspect of things. And so with the purple, typically it is like a warm shadows. And I think I just really like warm shadow things. I think most people use cold shadows and kind of warmer highlights. So for whatever reason, maybe I'll switch it up at some point, but I kind of been on a kick for that for years, of just kind of doing warm shadows on everything. And then kind of using kind of different colors, one main color, and then the shadow ends up being kind of a different color. I just like doing that. Don't know why.
Dude, it works. If you had put this figure in front of me, I just would have been stymied as to what exactly, because it's fantasy. So like you get to choose the colors.
Yeah.
And I get limited by my imagination when I go to paint historicals, thank goodness, because sometimes I think, I'm like, so what exactly does X look like? Like, what's the historical representation? What's the baseline? So I could set up a folder and just dump 10 or 15 examples of, say, Huns, like Hun artwork or Hun figures actually painted in the wild, and just kind of winnow down like what do I find as the baseline for that? But I don't think you could find a baseline for these wild colors that you've chosen. That's coming from your imagination, and it works perfectly. Looking at this, it's wow. Very, very nice.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I've always liked about it. And even though I really like Saga, just the freedom of fantasy, just be able to do whatever, it will always be my number one for model painting. So yeah, these guys are coming along here. So I've got 3.5 points painted, and I need to get to 8. And sent a couple test photos to Fred at Studio Tomahawk. So he's the one who handles all the photos and everything, and graphic design, I think, for the books and stuff, trying to get his approval on my photo skills, make sure they're up to snuff, because these are planning to be in the book.
Nice.
So yeah.
One more question. How big are these bases?
These are huge models. So they're on 40 millimeter bases.
Okay.
So this dude he's big, I've got him right here. Monty, you won't be able to see this, but I can just put up a little heathen guy next to him. He's basically the guy comes up to the waist of that soldier. So these are a little big for me personally, but this warband is meant to be one that is suitable for using Games Workshop Stormcast or the large Chaos Warriors. Just so they have a lot of armies that are just a ton of big guys, essentially. So this warband is meant to be a good proxy for whatever term you want to use, a good jumping off point.
Nice. For
getting into Age of Magic. And so the Force has a lot of models like this that are just some big, huge boys, and too big for me personally. But I'm doing it anyways. That was the point. So, Bestiera Miniatures. I think the guy on the left is a Ravager. The dude on the right is like Seraph or something, but great models. Really happy with them.
Yeah. Wild.
All right. So those guys were done on August 31st at 10:30, 11 p.m., an hour before the deadline.
Right.
Since then, I worked on some Medbury miniatures, and these are the ones that have been sitting for probably early July at some point here. So I got the dudes on foot we're looking at right now.
Mm-hmm.
So these were purely for fun, I would say. I have 24 warrior models in the Heathens, but I'd like to get to 40 warrior models so I could do like 5 points of warriors in a warband on foot. So these guys are just kind of slowly getting me there. So I've got another half point of warriors I can use. And these are the Medbury Vendel miniatures. And Medbury, he actually gave me these. These are metal models. Back when he did his Kickstarter, he gave me a batch of them. And I said I'd paint them up. So finally got around to it. And a couple great weapon guys there, Monty, heavy weapons.
Love it.
So they just go randomly in the units there. But I believe I have, the Yams Viking box had a heavy weapon guy.
Yep.
The Axe Maidens have a heavy weapon girl. I've got a couple heavy weapon Hearth Guards. I think I have 6 or 7 heavy weapon guys to be able to do a warrior unit. But I'll keep plugging away. I want to get up to that 10 or 12 heavy weapon unit there for maximum scariness. But any questions on these foot boys, Monty?
Yeah, just a quick one. First of all, love as always, love the work. Is this all acrylic, or do you have any oils in here?
Yeah, these are just acrylic, so
Okay.
no oils here.
Okay.
So these guys do get, they're base coated, and they were airbrushed using the Nadiral shading. So shot from below with kind of like a purplish, really thin purple ink. And depending on the shape of the model and stuff like that, you'll get kind of mixed results. So there is quite a bit of elbow grease even after that step. Sometimes it'll get you 80% of the way there. Sometimes it'll only get you 30% of the way there, depending on the angle of the model, where the shield is. Now, all these guys have cloaks, and so these cloaks turned out pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
But the cloaks on the mounted guys, just the way, so they were airbrushed to the Nadiral shading from below. Just with the rump of the horse there, I just couldn't get a good angle on the cloaks. So the cloaks of these guys, which, yes, I don't really have a back angle for the video here, but those were done more manually compared to basically, the cloaks on the foot sloggers, you could just get the perfect angle from below. It's like 95% of the way done. Just add a couple highlights to the shoulders and call it good. So the horsemen here are also metal, also Medbury Miniatures. So Zach got in on the Kickstarter that Medbury did for his Heathens back probably 6 or 8 months ago, and I was like, "Oh, you getting in on that, homie? Yeah, I'll take some horsemen here." So this is before I had a 3D printer too. So they're mounted on Gripping Beast horses, plastic horses, and they have plastic Gripping Beast shields, and that's so they, kind of blend in with my existing mounted Hearth Guard, and a couple of those spears are brass spears. So really happy with how these guys turned out.
Yeah.
Any
Beautiful.
questions on those guys, Monty?
I will say that I was at the state fair very recently, and I got to go in the horse barn, and these are wonderful horses. Whenever I go to the state fair and I go in the horse barn, I start taking pictures, and my daughter and my wife roll their eyes because they know I'm trying to look for painting inspiration. I'm like, is it possible to copy this color?
Awesome. Yeah.
So, nice.
That's cool. Yeah, I'd probably be doing the exact same thing, honestly, So what was the most common color horse at their, is it like a brown, light brown or
I
orange
think
brown?
yeah,
Or
I think it is brown. Is pretty common, but I also know because it is a state fair with judging, and some of the judging I'm assuming is riding events and some are show. So there's like some wonderful stuff that might be harder to see like out in the wild. There was like a gray modeled horse, which was just spectacular. And the dots were so fine. I remember thinking I would have to try to do the splatter brush to get dots that tiny.
yeah,
Like you can't do it with a brush stroke. So I was sitting there
yeah,
looking at this
it'd take
beautiful
all
horse.
day.
I'm like, how do I copy that? And then I remember like blood spatter is always kind of dicey. Like sometimes it clones and then it runs. I'm like, yeah, I probably, unless, you know what I could do? Maybe jam up my airbrush. And then when it spits a little bit, like
Yeah,
that might be the
now's the
effect.
time. Yeah, that kind of stuff is hard for me because usually you have to be kind of done with it when you add those spots.
Yep.
So what you have here is like a perfectly fine horse, and then you're
Yes.
going to go this one extra step
Yes.
that may or may not turn out. And
Exactly.
so, another horse question: how many of the horses were just like a single color? Like ignoring the socks, that
Right.
they have, but
Right.
so in wargaming, we almost always just do a single color, but
Right.
unless you're painting like Native American on horses, then for some reason people will do kind of the brown and the white, kind of the different colors. So, how many horses were like that?
You know, I wish
was
you'd
multi-
asked me this before I went.
Yeah,
I
it'd
would have
be
actually
good.
taken data.
We should
and
have a
plugged it in.
horse episode here.
So my remembrance of that very long day, it was a wild crowd breaking day, all-time record. So anyways, when I was in there, I remember thinking like just how common the blazes were and how interesting, like as a painter, I'm trying to get a blaze, but they've got like the white blaze.
What do you mean
on the
by
front.
blaze?
I'm sorry, I'm probably doing this wrong. My daughter will correct me. So the white running down the forehead.
Okay, that's
And
called a blaze.
I maybe a horse person can correct me, please, in the comments.
Sure.
So the white sometimes bleeds over the eyebrows, and I'd see like the most, again, because it's partly part performance or not performance, part like the horse going out and the rider doing a thing. Other times it's for show. So sometimes there was white like going around down the muzzle. Now the muzzle's turning pink, and I remember just there was such variation. And then I also like kind of to your question, the idea of a brown horse with a brown mane, usually that mane is a color shift off. And I remember seeing a mane that that was actually split colors. It was like dark, and then it went, and the second half of the mane was white. I've never painted that. And again, I'm trying to look at this. I'm trying to think like, is this just like the random thing? Is it some sort of like interesting thing that's bred in? I have no idea, but I did remember thinking I could step up my horse painting a little bit as I looked at just the variety of stuff.
Sure. So it kind of depends on if you've got 40 horses on your desk, you're just going to get them done.
Yes.
So these ones, I knew there was just 4 of them. They're Hearthguard. There's never going to be a lot of these in the force. And kind of the first batch I did were kind of plain. So I went back and gave these guys some socks and like that, I don't know, the beach colored horse, kind of the light brown one, gave him kind of the darker muzzle and the darker thing going around his feet there. So I was kind of thinking about the Numidians. So I painted 24 of those, and they're pretty basic. And so if I'm going to do another 4 points or 24, so 32, or at least another 8, potentially another 16. On those ones, I'd probably do more detailed stuff with the socks and the additional details. I might try to do like a multicolor one and see if I could give that a go. But pretty happy with these guys and how they turned out. And so now that these are done, I can finally we can resume the Fimbulwinter campaign, me and Zach. So I've been the holdup here because I've needed this additional unit of Hearthguard for my war band, and I wanted them painted. So I was the one delaying things, so now we can get that going. And we haven't recorded it yet, but we're trying to get it going so that can resume. But that was my August, so pretty happy with that. And let's move on to some game chat here. Monty, I'll let you go first. And we're looking at a river here with some bridges. And it's probably tough for the viewer to see, but something like Huns or Mongols or something on the bottom. Is that, or steppe tribes? What is that on the bottom?
So this was a really fun outdoor game. And the idea here was my buddy has some time ago bought my mounted Welsh. And I've been kind of training him up on how to run the all-mounted Welsh warband. And so on this day, I brought out my, fairly recently, last 3 months, painted Huns. And
okay, cool.
Yeah, we were playing a scenario from the KC November event packet, and I think it's called Treacherous. And the idea is there's a frozen river, and starting on turn 2, each player throws a die, and if you roll a 2 or below, the river becomes treacherous. And I should just say, to like kind of speed it along a little bit, it's especially bad for horses. Horses, being fairly heavy, tend to fall through the ice. So it was kind of it's interesting because you can't just go charging across the table and destroy each other, right? You start with like the bridges, and my buddy was playing the Welsh, and I know, like, I've kind of taught him like the activation reaction and how to use those. So I knew I couldn't just go, tromping across the bridge and think I could mess him up. So I thought I was being clever. So early game, I'm like, the Huns have really good mass activations and multi-activations. So I think I'm going to try to sneak across the river, get right in his face. He fights me on his side of the river. Time runs out. And if I have guys across and he doesn't, anything that does not get across the table by the time the game ends is considered dead. My idea fell apart because the river became treacherous at the start of turn 2 while I was still in the river.
Yeah. So we played this once, probably last month, and it was the same thing. The very first roll, it became treacherous. So yeah, I like this variation of that scenario. So based off, from Age of Invasions, they have the frozen river scenario. So you're trying to get to the other side. This one, I do like it a lot. It's a little different, but you can't have like your whole unit be destroyed, with really unlucky rolls, so it's more predictable about the consequences for trying to cross the river. And then 2, resting or shooting from the river also like isn't free. You're kind of taking the damage then. So I really liked that dynamic of it. And so you try to jump across there and keep the fight on his side?
I did. I really wanted to get across, and I thought, I'm like, what are the odds? I'm going to get across. And then because, like you said, like I really, I rolled up. We just started playing. I hadn't really thought about it. Once I was in the river, like he's, it's my turn, and he moves up close to me, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to take my composite bow shot. And then I pause, I go, ooh, and a bow shot while I'm in the river is an activation. An activation is I'm going to roll 2 dice. And then one time I got across the river, but then I got, they charged into me and I had to retreat. So now I'm stuck in the river, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to do a rest here. And I'm like, wait a minute, a rest is an activation. I can't do anything.
Yeah,
and my buddy was laughing. He thought it was pretty funny. I was stuck in the river. It was a treacherous idea to try to blitz across the river like I did.
Ah, cool. Yeah, so I'm sure just the nature of the scenario kind of dictated some things. But so how would you rate like a Welsh versus Hun matchup? The reactions versus some really strong abilities on the Hun side with fatigue and whatnot. You think it's a fair matchup or?
I do. It's tricky because it's a little like chess. Like I'm trying to tease out his activation reactions. And when he needs to, when he charges in, like, oh, well, okay, the part that really maybe kind of undoes the Huns is when he gets 2 uncommons and he plays the horseman. He's activating his whole warband because his whole warband is mounted. Yeah. That is an amazing efficiency. And I was making my saves early, but then I kind of was down I was really taking it between being caught in the river and his shooting and a couple plucky charges. He's now hitting my Hun warriors on 2s. Like you can
Yeah,
hook
just
this.
the start of the combat, we're starting at 2s. So 1 fatigue is auto hits, and then after the combat, or even before, he's shooting, and the horses are weak against shooting. You're 3, so I could see it being a very bloody game for sure.
It was, and the reason, like, I kind of focused with a shot or two on the warlords was I knew I was losing the game, so I had to dial up the risk meter, and I made kind of a little bit of a reach to get his warlord because it gets me some points. It would fatigue bomb him and do a couple other things. And I used the kind of cheeky Hun play where you move a fatigue. I moved it from like 1 unit, put it on his warlord, and with 1 or 2 other buffs, I was able to drop him in one go. And if my warlord could have survived, I would have won the game. He did like a charge, and I survived it. Then he did a shot, and I survived it. And then he had like 2 dice coming in. He got 1 hit with a javelin throw, and I fluffed it. And so right there, right on last dice of the game, which is actually classically great Saga. It goes right down to that last roll. My warlord, despite all the armor I painted him with, my warlord goes down, and we had a big laugh. That was nice.
Awesome. Sounds like a good game. All right, baby. So I got in a game as well. Unfortunately, forgot to grab a picture here, but I was playing the Eastern Princes. So using some of those freshly painted models against kind of local guy, Phil. He's using his mutts, and his mutt warband's unusual. So he's kind of, everything he has is painted. He's got various warbands he's painted over the years, but hasn't necessarily played that much. So his mutt warband is mostly Hearthguard, so 4 points of Hearthguard. Some on foot, some on horse. He had 1 on camels, and the rest just 2 points of foot warriors. So after the game, I actually had some grouping beast Arab infantry sprues. Here you go, Phil. Take these. Let's get you some more warriors, buddy. We'll fill out the warband a bit. But we did the new Studio Tomahawk scenario, the one with 3 objectives, and you kind of turn the objectives on, and then you can leave scenario. So you don't have to carry the objective, and you don't have to just sit next to the objective. You can, say you're claiming it, and then you can move away. So I actually really, really, really like that, because those objective games, we only have like 5, 6, 7 units, so just trying to, some units are out of the battle basically, because they're like an objective duty. So this one, you could claim an objective, and then, if they don't have any troops over there, you could return to the fight and get the action going. So I really like that scenario. I think the Eastern Princes are kind of well suited for mutts in some ways. My Hearthguard are mounted, my warlords mounted, but as long as we stay like 12 from the camels, we have activation reaction where we can just move off. We've got an ability that can get some rerolls going. So even if he tries to do a bloodbath, I can reroll some of my attacks and try to see it off. And then those 2 things, I think, go a long way. You've got resilience you can add to the Hearthguard. So even if he does make it, it's not going to be as devastating. You've got the wagon in the mix. So if he launches the run, there's just a lot of ways to negate the camel power. Now, if he had 3 or 4 units of camels, perhaps would have been a little different game. But so the 1 unit was pretty easy to manage with those different tools. And then with the 3 different objectives, he had to split up his army. So with the Eastern Princes, just relied on that bottom right 2 dice. They take a fatigue at the start of every combat and can't pop Saga abilities. So even though Phil was getting the defensive play up, whatever the 2 dice, rerolling 6s, and all my stuff had javelins and heavy weapons, of course. So rerolling a third of my attacks, but still just kind of each turn I was able to target a unit and kind of wipe it out with that ability. So Good game. Interesting to see that kind of matchup. Have you played against the Princes as the Mutts yourself?
I have not, but in the times we played, I think
we used it a couple times in our like campaign years and years ago.
Exactly. So it was intriguing enough to me that I still would like to go back and paint them and play them. I think the thing that has slowed me down at different points is I love the idea of Eastern Princess Warrior, like a unit of 11 or 12 warriors with heavy axes, and trying to get Eastern Princess looking figures. That's my own issue. Like it's not easy just out of the box to like paint them up. You got to kind of source. Yeah. You got to source the figures, probably do some kit bashing.
I think, well, Ani, I think years ago that was an issue, but I think there's been quite a few, at least in the 3D print space. So
okay.
There's one of our Black Knight Miniatures, so sponsor of Saga Thursday. So he's started doing kind of Eastern medieval era stuff that I think would fit well with the loose princes. And then Northern Crusades Miniatures.
Okay.
So they have a ton of Teutonic Knights and like Lithuanians and Russians, and again, the mounted knights and footmen and stuff. So between those two, actually, I think they fill out the range nicely. If you're willing to use, resin 3D print models. But years and years ago, there still isn't really a set. I know Victrix, the Pagan Rus box, was previewed many, many years ago. And they're still working on, I think they said they're working on the knight version or armored. So they have the unarmored guys done, but they're going to add armored guys to the sprue or vice versa or something. So I saw an update on that the other day. There's some Fireforge stuff you could use, I think. Yep. But yeah, especially, when second edition first landed, I think probably 7 or 8 years ago now, it was a lot trickier sourcing those models. I think it's a great warband. The abilities are all conditional, so you're never going to be able to use all of them all the time to a great effect. So I like playing it because then it just makes it easier to figure out what you're going to do if there's only 4 or 5 abilities that are relevant at any time. There's less decisions to be made, and you get on with it. So I'll probably take him to an event sometime. I think that'll be fun.
Nice.
So that was a good game. Thanks for the game, Phil. We got a game in, Monty.
We did.
So I'm sharing a picture, tabletop simulator here.
Yep.
I was running the Vandals from Age of Invasion. So they use the Carolingian board from Vikings, Warriors, Hearthguard, mounted, or the Warriors can be on foot. So I was using a point of Hearthguard, mounted Hearthguard, mounted Warlord. Unit of 6 mounted warriors, 6 warriors on foot, 12 warriors on foot as a big unit, and then 2 points of levy with bows. Yep. So that's one of the main differences with the Vandals is being able to take 2 units or take levy with bows, where I think Carolingians are just levy with javelins, if I remember correctly.
That sounds right. You would have to take warrior bow.
Yeah, because you have to take warriors to get the bows. Yep. So I actually played the Vandals before against you, I think last year, and I had 2 units of javelin levy.
I remember that.
And I was like king of the hill, so just pushing everything in the middle in that game. And I was having trouble activating them and thought, bow levy are juicier than warrior levy, but if you can't activate them, what are you really getting here? This game I rolled plenty of uncommons, so that was never as big an issue. And I think, Monty, bow levy better than javelin levy most of the time.
On this
day, what do you think?
On this day, it was hellish.
Okay, let's say what you were playing.
So, excuse me. I was running the Anglo-Saxon Horde. And just dead simple, rolled up without like a great deal of thought. I was like, I'm going to do what I have painted. And I never played them. They're sitting in a box all the time. But 5 units of basically sword and board or shielded spear levy, and then 1 point of bowman levy. and a warlord on foot. No Hearthguard, just going for like the mass effect. So that was my build.
Yeah. So you were opposite in this photo. So you were on the red line. We can kind of see little digital bodies there. And so this is at the end of the game. But
yes, it was.
It was a pretty quick game, pretty slow one. We were just playing a scenario from the Kansas City pack or whatever. Is pretty much it's a pitch battle with a couple random bonuses for melee kills that didn't really come into play. So for most of the turns, it was just Monty's one levy unit versus my two levy units, and I could shoot more and soup up the shooting. So despite your guys being in heavy cover there, I kind of learned this from Patty at Saga Storm last year. If you just throw enough shots, even the levy and the hard cover will go down.
Right.
And so I think you had a little bad luck sooner than later, and so quickly nullified your shooting, and then it was kind of a standoff for the most part here, right, Monty?
Yeah, I had a notion, and the notion died as like turn 1 and 2 unfolded. By turn 2, I think you had pretty much taken my Saga dice and wrecked my levy bow unit, and then I was thinking about it for a minute, and I'm like, okay, so that didn't even require overshooting, right? You didn't even incur a fatigue. It wasn't like you were shooting, and shooting a third time. It was 2 rounds of shooting from each bowman. And I was shot out of the hardcover. So I did the math. I'm like, okay, so my levy will be armor 4. My bowmen were armor 4, and they were saving on 3 ups, and they're almost all dead. And my levy walking through the field is armor 4, saving on 4 ups. I'm like, oof. Plus, I had this idea that I was going to kind of try to go around what would be my right flank with 2 levy units and push you out of the hardcover. And you had some good rolls. You had a rare parked in. Is it Defenstration?
There's one where I can do any ability with it.
So super
it's nice
aces
for versatility.
Right.
Yeah.
Super aces for defense. And I think you had, at different times defense up. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to be able to get those bow levy out of the hardcover. And then I tried to pull my units on the left flank that were isolated from the rest of the army around to my right flank. And in that same time, you were starting to nudge your rolling thunder out of the woods.
Come on, charge me, Monty. Monty, charge me.
You were rolling thunder my levy, and I'm like, yeah, no, I'm not going to do that. I was trying to pull them all together. I really should have deployed them as one coherent if I'm going to make a mad rush. And then at some point, I looked at how many points I was down, and I'm like, you know what? I am now playing for a tie.
Yeah, so it actually did become a draw in the end. So I scored 8 points. I don't believe you killed some models, right?
I didn't get a point. I didn't kill anything. I shot 5. I got to roll.
You got some shots.
Yeah, I took 1 shot. I rolled 5 dice. I missed on all of them. So I killed nothing. Nothing.
But for the scenario, you got to score at least 10 to win. So this one just went 5 rounds with the roll-offs there. So we both roll a die. If it's over 7, which I guess is 50-50, or I think more likely or not that it's going to end on turn 5, maybe slightly. So went quick there. I needed to be a little bit more bold. And, at some point, if I could have just traded on turn 4, I gained 3 more points, you gained 3 more points, and then it's 11-3 or whatever. It's still a win.
Right.
But just the way I got a slow start on the advance, and so I didn't set up that trade earlier. It was like the last turn. I'm like, well, there's no way I'm going to kill like seven levy in a single combat or something. You had your whole board lined up. It gets to be too much. So it's a good game, good learning game, good cagey stuff. Interesting with the Vandals here. Did a good job keeping that warlord surrounded by bodies.
I
knew
what you wanted to do. I don't have any problem putting my ward like up on the front lines, but I know not to do that against the Carolingians.
So it's a good game. Interesting. So if you have the Carolingian warband, you could easily convert it into a Vandal warband, because I think people probably use 3 points of bow warriors. So if that's 24 points, that gets you 2 points of bow levy.
Yep.
And then you can just paint up more warriors or something. So, it's a little shootier, lacks in the melee a little bit, but it's a little bit more resilient on the body count. So definitely interesting warband. Would have to play it again, I think, just to decide. I was rolling pretty much what I needed every turn exactly on those 5 or 6 dice. So I would try it again. Maybe Monty wouldn't want to play against it again.
I've been bumping into a lot of Carolingians lately.
Yeah, sure.
And each time, like one of my games, just kind of roll up. I'm like, yeah, I know Carolingians are shooty, and then it's like, damn. I forgot how shooty it is. I mean, how can I forget that, Rodge? So I don't know. This one was kind of hard because you were tucked between, your army was tucked between the woods and the rocky ground, and I'm misdeployed, and I'm just thinking if I spend all my dice to close the gap between the red line and your army on the blue line, and you keep all your dice for when I get to the blue line, or if I double move into charge, if I throw you a unit on a double charge, you're going to just gobble that up. If I manage to push 2 up, the rest of the army is stranded from the 2. It just feels like a piecemeal disaster. So I had ideas. Another idea was back in version 1, the Irish were so shooty. And like if you were playing certain scenarios, the trick was to not really engage them until like maybe turn 3. And that way, like you only eat 4, 5, and 6. Those are the Irish shots, and maybe you can kind of do it. And so I was thinking maybe turn 3, and I just was like, ugh. I was watching the score counter and everything else. I'm like, yeah, we could do better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's going to be a tough one. I think sending a missile over, that wouldn't have worked. Whatever bonus points you got for melee and charging and killing would just be, I just bring it right back. So you kind of need to just bite the bullet, one turn, just move the whole army up, get right in my face, and try to weather it as best you can and go in. And then it's kind of let the dice gods decide a little bit. That one is trickier to keep your warlord alive. So then he basically has to stay behind in that heavy cover, pretty much, because he's not going to be able to hide anymore if you do that. So you're losing his wheel bay, and he's not going to be in a position to really help out, when you need him to. So it would have been tough anyways. But
I think the least shooting I could possibly experience to this build was the wheel bay is 6 shots. Is it Ardor where you get 3 units to be activated? That's 12 shots. We're at 18. You probably with your clever play can find a way to get 1 uncommon out there. So probably 24 shots. And so you're like, okay, 24 shots, average 12 hits. But for an extended period of time, my saves to shooting have just been atrocious.
It matters, if you're lucky or unlucky to start,
right?
Can set the tone.
I was playing Adam, and it's like everything he shoots at me was like, he's like 4 hits out of 5, 4 hits out of 5, 4 hits out of 5. I'm like, okay, I can do this. Just save 2, and I'm like, I saved 1. I'm like, oh my gosh, and it's just like, and I know like your memory isn't quite accurate, but man, when you're not making your shooting saves, your army evaporates very quickly.
So definitely, and you really just have that one ability, I believe, right?
Right, so, one. I took I pick up 2 defensive dice.
So
Still need to roll those saves.
Better than nothing, but
it is.
If you're going to KC, pick an army that has a plan. You got the bodies, so that's the other way you get through it. So it was good game. Thanks for setting it up, Monty, getting us going. Appreciate it. I'm never excited for the tabletop simulator, but whenever I'm actually doing it, I'm like, yeah, this is fun. This is good. Ain't bad.
Yeah.
Still in my underwear. 7 in the morning at home, getting some Saga in.
Right.
Nothing to sneeze at. So, all right. Wow, that is the last of the games, I think. Did you play any other games?
That's
Nothing
it for
worth
me.
mentioning. Yep. So 2 games in a month. That's usually what I'm rocking if I can swing it. So awesome. Well, if you haven't yet, head on over to the Saga Thursday Discord server. The tournaments I mentioned earlier, all their packets are up there. You'll find the player finder. Put your pin. Trying to get to 500 pins by end of October. So about 2 months to go. I don't remember how many pins, but we got a ways to go. So get on over there and make your mark. And if you're interested, head on over to the Saga Thursday Patreon, link below. Monty, I counted. If you go there and sign up, you will get access to 21 Saga Thursday episodes behind that paywall. So
Nice.
2 of those are about Age of Chivalry coming up, and 2 of those are about the next Age of Magic book. So if you're interested in those, head over. And Monty, I also got the Saga Q&A with Alex.
Nice.
So that is on the Patreon, but it is open to anybody. It's a free video just hosted on Patreon. So if you just become a free member, you can access the Q&A with Alex, the head honcho at Studio Tomahawk. I don't know, it's kind of more personal Q&A, but what you think about that Age of Samurai news?
Yeah, that
Monty,
was surprising.
Monty, did you watch the video?
I did.
Okay.
I was on vacation, but I still dialed in. So the Age
right.
of Samurai, I've got some buddies who are mad about Samurai. And by having like these test of honor, I think it is, like large collections, they would be like day one, probably could field a Saga warband. So so when the time comes, I think that'll be additional Saga players. It'll be fun. It'll be colorful. And it was interesting that it's that far along.
Yeah, I was actually I just threw that in there. I didn't think that would be the answer, so I was quite surprised by that. And I was really worried his answer was going to be, I don't know, have you started on it yet, Rodge? So I'm really glad he didn't say that. I'm like, oh, he better not volunteer me for that. Yeah, Age of Magic, I can handle that. The historical side, washing my hands of it. So was very happy to hear that was the state of Age of Samurai. So head on over there, patreon.com/Saga Thursday. Watch that video, and if you're so inclined, throw a couple shekels out there, and you can get 20 more free videos. Oh, free after you pay. Coming up here, Monty, I've got an Age of Hannibal Romans review with our buddy Patrick, I believe. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's what I got queued up. I didn't go back and look at my notes. And then also a video with JP. We're taking a look, and we're kind of measuring our Saga PPs a little bit, Monty, seeing who has more armies, how many different war bands we have covered. Paint one, play many. You're quoted in that one, Monty.
Right.
So that one's a good video for sure. Looking forward to that one going out, and should get the juices flowing on some Saga warband building for everybody. And that will be it. This one, yeah, circled back around. So if you have any comments or questions about our games or some of the painting that we've done, Monty, are those Irish/Scots for sale yet, buddy?
No, but it's a short shelf life for some of these war bands.
All right, you heard it here, pal. All interesting trades considered. I think it was Monty saying there, but let us know your thoughts. And yeah, when we come back, we'll have Saga Storm under our belt. Maybe we'll talk about that. Maybe we'll talk about something else, but it's been a blast, buddy. We'll do it again. Check you later, folks. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Saga! If you'd like to see more Saga content, consider joining the Heathen Army over on Patreon, or popping on down to the Saga Thursday Discord server. Links below. Thanks, guys.